Thank you, thank you. All right.
Okay.
Sounds like Hal's all ready.
Welcome everyone to the Public Works
Maple
Committee
again
meeting.
This year, so.
Chair will entertain a motion to approve the minutes of the previous meeting. So Dan on the motion, second. Penny on the second, Mr. Casito on the second. All those in favor of approving the minutes signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. All right, let's have privilege of the floor, and we do have Nick with us. Hey, Nick, you got something for us today?
Yeah, a couple items. So I'm Nick Rowell with Warren County Soil and Water Conservation District. Here to announce a couple items for the county's municipal separate storm sewer system program, also known as MS4. So year one, this is a federally mandated permit from EPA, regulated by the New York State DEC. So year one of the new permit is 2024. So we've got the annual report here, the draft annual report. So it's open for public comments. It's on our district website, will be on the county's website as well. And then there's also the stormwater management program plan for the permit. And the updates for that are year 2 and 3. So that's 2025 and 2026. Also open for public comment and review. I'll leave a copy with Mr. Hajos. So, and it's also got my card on it. If anybody has any questions, happy to answer them.
Any questions for Nick today? No, we certainly appreciate Soil and Water and all the good work that you do at Soil and Water. Please pass that message along.
Well, thank you, Ron.
Thank you. All right, without objection, we'll start with Parks and Recreation. Is that all right with everyone? Dean, I see you.
Sure. Hi.
Have you moved up the ladder? Or have you-
I moved, I don't know if I moved down or up. I'm not really sure, but.
Welcome, and
sir.
what do we have in front of us?
Okay, 2 action items for the agenda, sir. The first is to request to amend the budget with the acceptance of funding from our beautiful local municipality in the town of Bolton, Flautiana Farm. As this relationship has been for several years, accept the occupancy tax support for $2,500. This is for hobby and special interest series programs, including really good high performing programs where Northeastern Institute brings wildlife and that, so.
All right, you've heard the request to amend the budget. Do we have a motion? Mr. Merlino, Mr. Bruno on the second. Any questions? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
Okay, the second item, sir, is a request to apply for a grant. I'd just like to add 2, if awarded, to approve, to accept, if you don't mind. This also is something that has been established over the years. This is a request for $1,000 from the Community Conservation Program through the Soil and Water Conservation District. They in the past have, without hesitation, stepped up to help us present for the Spring Zing event, which will be coming up, and I'll hand out a poster you've seen in your packet. And also for other programs of the Warren County Fish Hatchery.
All right, the motion is to, the request is it to apply and accept or just accept
Both, if you don't.
To apply and accept,
If received.
for this funding? Mr. Casito on the motion, and Mr. Trainer on the second. Any discussion? There being none? All those in favor of applying and accepting these dollars signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
Okay, and just a couple items for review, and Mr. Hajos, if you need to interject. But first, with absolute excitement, I would like to share with you our annual Maple Festival event in your packet, Saturday, March 8th, where maybe the only time I get to say we offer flights of maple syrup, that is. You will have your choice of fancy, medium, or dark amber, or dark syrups, but it's a great day. The public comes out, we get a great turnout. And everything from showing people how to tap and tasting and a tour of the environmental or the the sugar house as well. And then finish with a French toast stick dip into those beautiful syrups. Hope you can get out. We will provide that poster out to all the municipalities as well, and I'll work with Don and make sure everyone gets some information. And if I may, I'll just roll them off for you.
You're
so
on a
you
roll.
guys-
Keep going.
Very good. All right. And also, as I mentioned earlier, our Spring Zing event, rain, shine, hail, or whatever the postman may be able to conquer as well. That will be held Saturday, May 10th from 9:30 to 2. Once again, Jeff Engley has done a fantastic job of rallying resources and partner agencies, Fish 307, private individuals, Trout Unlimited, DVC, Sheriff's Department, for a beautiful full day event. Free admission, lunch, we'll provide a good old American hot dog, bag of chips and soda for you, or water. But that will be on Saturday, May 10th, and we look forward to anyone who can come down, and likewise, we'll share with the media.
Okay,
All
is that
right.
it?
Very last thing, just quick acknowledgement. We are in good stead. As you know, we work with the Saratoga Corinth Hudson Railway, and we will be having the Maple train. We'll be running on our track up to Hadley's event, and that's about it.
Great, Mr. Hajo?
I just have one thing, last thing to add, and actually Dean sent it to me this morning, is Friends of Uganda have graciously, or will be graciously donating us some money. As you all know, we have a part-time position up there in the summer. Typically, they don't last the whole summer because of the funding that we have for that individual. So they are going to provide us some funding so we can keep that intern / summer help on a little bit longer. So we will be bringing that back next committee.
It'll make it a much more attractive position. You know, you try to give an internship position or a summer assistant naturalist position. If it's very short, a lot of people come out, look at it and be like, oh, okay, thanks anyways, because it's only several weeks. And this allows us to take care of a college student from start to the end of the summer.
Yep.
And it's a
We'll
little more-
definitely send some kind of letter, thank you letter or something.
We will, but we'll be bringing it back next
Oh,
month.
okay,
Yes.
all right,
Yep.
very good. All right, then,
And that's all I have.
okay, thank you, Dean, thank you for being here.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, Dean.
Thank you.
If you have any extra fish, don't think about both.
Just out of curiosity,
Yes, sir.
like for the clinic, is it you bring your own equipment? Are
You do not,
are there gonna be fishing rods and all
Yes.
set up for people to try?
yes, Trout Unlimited will be there and they'll teach
Okay.
casting. If you want to bring your own fishing gear and actually get a feel for it, if you bought a new rod, new weight rod or something like that, like to field out, you're more than welcome. If you're bringing children, they do not have to bring their own gear to fish in our pond in the back. We have all the gear for that, and we have several staff, and I've had that position of running back and forth and putting worms on. But yeah, there will be a bevy of individuals there with varying expertise to tell you how your equipment is, to test drive your equipment and things like that. So,
It's a fantastic event, and it's even better to watch the kids fish in that pond and pull out those trout. It's just the looks on their faces, and that's what gets them into what we all want to be, the outdoors,
Right.
whatever, they truly enjoy it.
I'm just thinking that if somebody goes and wants to try, and never doesn't have, fly rod or reel.
that's the whole point. You can come there
Great.
without anything and we'll set them up.
Wonderful.
Excellent.
Okay, is that it?
Thank you.
Okay, without objection, then we'll move into solid waste, is that all right? And
Thank you.
All right, have a good day.
From bean to solid waste.
we won't move into it too deeply,
Sorry.
but we'll take it up
Good luck.
today. Kevin, what do we have in front of? us?
So the first thing we have is a new contract, and this is for a term agreement for solid waste and recycling disposal services for Countryside. And this is for their solid waste and recycling up at Countryside.
Chair, I'll take a motion to bring this forward for consideration. Supervisor Turner, you had your hand up the last time. I missed you. Are you good this time? Okay, and Supervisor Bean, thank you.
tired.
Any discussion on this? There being none, are we ready for the question? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Not carried. Next item.
The next item we have on here is a term agreement for medical waste disposal services for various sites. They include public health, the sheriff's office, I believe Countryside. And it's mainly to remove needles and things like that they do typically use as medical waste. I just want to add on is this is something that the county doesn't haul because of the type of containers and such that they have. We don't pick this type of container up, so we wouldn't be doing this in under our hauling.
This is all under contract.
Yes.
Mhm. All right, then, bring this forward. Supervisor Bean, thank you. Second. Supervisor Turner, thank you. Any discussion? We're ready for the question on authorizing the agreement for disposal of medical waste, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Not carried. Next item, Kevin.
The last one is for a term agreement for solid waste and recyclable disposal services for the municipal center, the sheriff, the Bolton Meal Site, and the airport. And this is for cardboard, recyclables, and any solid waste, C and D and tires as well.
Okay. Supervisor Strainer on the motion, Supervisor Bean on the second. Any further discussion? We're ready for the question then. All those in favor of this agreement signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And carried. Next item.
Next item, I'm gonna turn over to Scott in a minute, but as you all recall, last month we came, we were our first month into doing hauling for other towns. We certainly were able to do it with the staff that we have, but this is a very slow time of year for the staff, and we don't have all of our tourists or residents who typically come in the summer here. So I said, when we get to summer, it'll be very difficult for us to do it with the 2.5 individuals that we have right now, which is 2 full-time, 1 part-time. Because we could certainly probably do it with that staff, but then I have nobody maintaining the containers that we have, and we always had a person that was maintaining the containers. So I said last month that most likely we would be bringing a new position for this month. And that's what this is. And Scott, I'm gonna turn it over to Scott a little bit, because he did some comparisons and costs and how this would impact us, and Chairman, I'll turn it over to
Scott, we're all ears.
Yeah, so kind of looking through the first 2 months and, what maybe came up that we didn't anticipate. I think one thing we somewhat anticipated was just the condition of the containers. So under the private haulers, they would alert us if there was maybe a catastrophic failure with one of the containers and it needed to be repaired. But now, as we're picking up containers, we're seeing the bottoms of the containers. Our drivers are giving us an update every time they pick up. And, there's some containers that are in pretty rough shape that, one, I think now that we're taking a close look at the containers, we'll be better at preventative maintenance, just some simple things like, lubricating hinges and, talking to transfer stations about moving the containers in a way that doesn't cause damage. So I think that's one thing that we didn't anticipate the full extent of kind of the container condition. That being said, one of our drivers who does repairs has been driving. So that's kind of one of the areas where if he's driving, he's not doing the repairs that are needed. So I think that's one of the things that came up that we, maybe underestimated was container kind of repair. The other one is like, it's a lean operation, which I think is good, but there's not a lot of extra capacity, for drivers going down with sickness or leave or things like that. So while I think they're keeping up right now, there could be burnout. Long-term sustainability with this number of drivers, I think is something we're thinking about. So I think that's another reason we've been looking at this additional position. So then I did do some calculations. If we add this full-time position with fringe, obviously the 2025 rates are set, those won't change. But then I looked ahead to 2026, adding this position and accounting for some salary increases, it would probably put us up to about $350 per mile versus $276 per mile. When I did the calculation at $350 per mile, still, there was savings across the board, except for one area, and I'll pass this out. The one area that is Luzerne Road for recyclables would be an increase over the amount from 2024. Still, overall, Queensberry would be out of savings when you look at across MSW, C&D, recyclables, and glass. So even adding this position, if we anticipate the rate for 2026, it's still a cost savings for hauling across all towns. And I can share this with the group as well. But yeah, I don't know, Kevin, anything else?
I don't think so. And again, we went into this knowing that it was, I guess one of big trial and error, because we haven't hauled since probably back in the 90s. So this was something new for us. And I certainly think adding this position, I think will be okay. That'll give us the extra capacity in the summer. And it will allow us to have the containers being worked on with one of our other individuals who would typically be driving. So I think this is, and as Scott said, It certainly has increased the rates that we have per mile, but it certainly is not putting you at the rates that you paid when you had the private hauler running for you.
All right, let's bring this forward for discussion. Mr. Strainer on the motion, Mr. Bean on the second, thank you. Any comments on this, Mr. Cressida?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Will the position require a CDL?
It will.
Okay, at that rate of 48,826.
That's the starting,
Will, okay.
yeah,
So when they get hired, they'll have this CDL in place already, won't be a,
correct. It won't be a training on this. I need somebody to go right into having a CDL and driving the truck.
Mr. Strainer? Mhm.
We can't hire any part-time people. I'm thinking, guys that have retired from the county or the state that have CDLs and might want to work a day or two a week.
Day or two a week won't cut it in the summer months.
But if you have 5 people that will do a day or two a week. You can rotate out and then, these people can pick up some extra money. You don't have to try and train somebody.
We could certainly look at that. I don't think Scott and I looked at it from that perspective. We just knew we needed, I mean, I guess it wouldn't change because if you had 2 people coming in on, or a person coming in on Monday and Tuesday and another person coming in on Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, the rate's still going to be kind of the same.
no health insurance, so.
That would be the difference.
I mean, I'm all for being efficient and saving money. It's always a great thing, but also meeting the mission is important. Critically important. I'll speak for my community. I mean, soon now our activity, like most of the towns, is going to increase substantially. And I want to make sure that you're able to meet those requirements, which include, oh, by the way, equipment. That's another concern that I have at this early stage in this consolidation process is the, equipment breaks and then what do you do? And so I hope you have alternatives on the equipment side, even if it's leasing on an emergency basis to make sure that those deliveries or those pickups take place in the summer. I think that's absolutely essential. Otherwise, we fail the mission, right? Mr. Hedges?
Yeah, I'll add, I mean, again, I'm definitely not opposed to, looking at part-time. My fear is someone will be part-time, like, yeah, okay, I did it for a couple weeks or a couple months and I don't want to do it anymore. At least if I have a full-time position, they're gonna get paid well, they can get their benefits, they're more likely to stay on.
Well, I'm also listening to Scott though say, some of these people need days off or might be sick.
We actually have one out right now that he had an operation on his knee, and that's why I have 2 other drivers going nonstop, and they're not able to do anything with the repair of the containers.
So when you say repair containers, you said some oiling here,
No, that's so, I will tell you, most of these containers, I mean, we ourselves move around a lot, but there's towns that will move. If they have an extra compactor, they may pull ours out and put another one of ours in without us having to do it. And they may be doing it with a front loader. They may be pushing down material inside of a container to get as much as they can in, which in turn bows out the sides of my container. I myself just went to the Luzerne Road on Saturday to drop off recyclables, and I was looking at the plastics container there and all the columns on the side of the container, the supports are rotted out in the bottom. Those are, and it's water, it's salt, it's, Scott and I were talking about, and he sent out an email to all the towns regarding snow on our containers. If the snow is not removed, then it'll thaw, it'll melt into the containers, it freezes, then I take them down to any of our tipping sites and we can't get it out of the containers. So we're looking at a lot of different things, but there's a lot more repairs than just greasing the hinges or something like that. Doors are a big example. We're typically having to repair doors on the back of the containers because the doors rot at the hinges and they come off, and then we have to build new hinges and put them back on.
so you're looking for someone that has to be a welder to
We
weld?
already have somebody that does that.
I see guys all the time that are mobile. Can you ever subcontract with some of those people to come and do the work right there at the site?
We could, and that would probably be a term agreement that we could certainly bring through committee in the future as well. But I think this position, we have an individual who's always worked out of containers. He's actually the one out with a with a knee injury or whatever now, or knee operation, but he's the one that typically will work on the containers. This is really for a driver. That's what this is going to be for, is for somebody to be able to keep up with the demand in the summer when the summer residents come in here. Because I think, and you can tell me if I'm wrong, but on an average, during a month in the summer, we will be running from Bolton, just Bolton alone, 27 times a month. 27 times in 1 month, in the summer months.
Well, then we gotta start going to Bolton.
And Queens, both Queens area facilities are just as busy.
And where are we bringing this?
Several locations. We're bringing it to Fort Ann for recyclables. We're bringing it to the burn plant for solid waste, and we're bringing C&D down to Green Ridge facility.
I mean, growing pain, I mean, I think we're gonna go through some growing pains here. I have no question about that, but I think that, you know, the big mistake is to underestimate the mission. That you do not want to do. That program can't have wishful thinking. That program has to be reflected, has to reflect the correct amount of equipment, the correct amount of personnel so that we can meet the mission. And if we do that, then sure, we're gonna have some growing pain, of course. And as we learn, right?
Yeah, and kudos to Scott, because bringing Scott on board has helped us to just keep a close eye on that. And Scott's built a very good relationship with all the transfer station operators. So it's going well, but that's why we hired Scott, is to stay on top of this.
And I'm worried
do-
about getting a CDL driver. That's, I mean, that's, and everyone is, so I mean, that's another big concern. And you have the advantage of
It would.
having a core of CDL drivers that perhaps could lend a hand in an emergency, but that's long term, what we really have to have is our own people, right? All right, then, are we ready for the question? All those in favor of item 4, creating this position, additional position, signify by saying aye.
I,
Opposed? Carried. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for,
And he's out to do the rest of this.
we're gonna move into the updates now, the discussion. You wanna do, okay, go ahead, Scott.
Yeah, and obviously we were just talking about hauling, but one other thing to point out is we have a transfer station operator meeting on March 11th. So again, all these different stations have kind of very varied ways they do their work. We got a few folks together last year, and it was incredibly helpful for, not only for me to understand kind of the transfer station operators, but also for them to talk to each other. They would connect with each other in a way that I think helps with kind of efficiency and just little things about roles and responsibilities. You know, just even like who clears the snow that's on top of the container, because we can't have drivers going down the road with ice that could come off containers. So we're meeting here at the county center on March 11th. I've invited all the transfer station operators as well as town supervisors, and we'll have a list of questions, try to go through any, you know, anything that is not clear, like whose responsibility is it to do X, Y, or Z. Some transfer stations can move equipment, some can't. We can even go over best practices for how to move equipment, so we don't have damage to the containers. So yeah, looking forward to that meeting on March 11th with hauling. I don't know if I have anything else.
Let me just interject that. I mean, I think that is just wonderful. And I think that kind of information sharing and that type of problem solving that they might be able to do together with you, I think I mean, that's, those of us that supported this initiative, I think that's what we were hoping would take place, that the kind of, to get to the kind of level of operation that we really need to get to. And I'm very happy to hear about those meetings.
And additionally, I haven't done anything with it yet, but as we enter all the data for each town, we're gathering container condition. I'm seeing the tonnage, how full every container is. So we'll have an idea of like, oh, why is Lake Luzerne picking up when their containers are only 50% versus, you know, just looking at the efficiency of how we run the operation as well. So yeah, looking forward to kind of putting together some of that data as well.
that it?
Oh, I have a question here after seeing this. Why is the Luzerne Road transfer 43.85% change? What did that change mean?
So on that sheet, I looked at 2024 was the waste management rates for hauling. So I compared that with my projection for 2026. If we add this full-time position, it's still showing a savings from 2024, which was waste management's hauling rate. It doesn't reflect the tipping rates, which are generally going up, across the board.
Well, I mean, that was like the only plus. Is that because that's such a busy transfer station?
Just the distance too, like it happened, the margins at Queensbury were smaller, like Hague, it was $700 a haul. The margins were much smaller at Queensbury because they're shorter runs. But even overall with Queensbury, if you look across all the materials, it's still a savings for Queensbury because they're,
Well, I mean, because Ridge Road was -20.
and that's just the distance to the facility, because we have ACE, and this is something else that's somewhat unpredictable, is who gets the bid each year. This year it was ACE, who's in Fort Anne for recyclables, which is a further run from the Luzerne Road station than when we used to go to Hiram Hollow, so.
So let's go back to the snow.
Mhm.
I know because I go to their Ridge Road transfer station. Their containers pushed up against that compactor. And are you talking about clearing the snow off the top of that in that location? Or are you talking about if there's extra containers or someplace else? And I'm just kind of wondering what you're gonna do to be able to alleviate that problem.
Yeah, I mean, it could be as simple as somebody taking like a roof rake and pulling the snow off the top of the containers. Because again, we're hauling and now we're going down the road and again, there's several impacts. The one impact is in fact, I was driving down the Northway the other day, tractor trailer had ice. And it literally, I mean, just landed all around cars were swerving around. That's what we don't want to have happen with this. The other is the containers aren't waterproof. They melt on top, even if they're a closed container, they get water inside, and then we have to take a container, let's say from Johnsburg, try to dump it. We can't get the material out of it, so now we got to bring it back up, put it in our bays to warm it up. And that's inefficient, that I have to do that and then run and go get a container somewhere else. So we're trying to avoid having to do those as well. So it's as simple as getting a roof rake and pulling the snow off the containers.
We started with, the analysis was the comparison.
Mhm.
But I think as we go forward, the real comparison is going to be the avoided cost
Mhm.
increase. In other words, we all know that the rates have just been skyrocketing across the board, almost on everything in municipal government, and particularly in the world of recyclables and solid waste. So the question is, if we can be more efficient going forward, it doesn't necessarily result in a reduction necessarily of cost, but it abates the increase that otherwise would have taken place that we all would have to pay. So I think that's going to be a more difficult analysis going forward for you, Scott.
Mhm.
Put that out there just for something to think about. All right.
Then I can move to the next item, which is kind of an update on the food scrap pilot. So we're still in a bit of a holding zone because we haven't gotten we got the notification about the award, but we haven't gotten the official contract yet. So we're not ready to move full steam ahead, but we are meeting each month as a working group. And one thing I looked at was, once we have the green light, what's the lead time for all these different aspects from, Kevin and I met just to talk through the actual site itself. And I think Kevin felt comfortable that, that could all be done within.
Done in-house.
In-house within a couple months. I looked at all the different equipment. Most of the equipment has a pretty short turnaround time from the buckets to the toters. There is one piece of equipment called a trommel screener that has about an 8-week lead time. So I'm just kind of looking at the lead time once we have the green light that we're ready to go. We have started, we've pulled Don Lehman into the working group just to talk through our outreach and education. Can't underestimate how important it's gonna be to have, good education and outreach to minimize any, disinformation or confusion about kind of the program itself. So we're I'm putting together just some content for education and outreach as we're kind of getting ready to formulate the, once we can start. The one area that came up at the working group, so we talked about there's going to be drop-off sites for this pilot. We've kind of talked with different transfer stations and different potential drop-off sites, but I feel like we're getting to the point where we need to kind of finalize what the drop-off sites are going to be. So that's kind of where we're at right now, connecting with the different folks. And the areas that have been talked about for drop-off sites are, Queensbury transfer stations, potentially Lake George,
Bolton and Warrensburg.
Bolton, Warrensburg. The library has expressed some interest. SUNY Adirondack has expressed some interest. So it's good news, but we kind of need to finalize that because we don't want to have too many sites because again, we're hauling. We put into the work plan that we're going to use a county-owned rack truck. We're going to pick up the material and bring it to the site. So it needs to be scaled right because we don't want it to be too big. So it's fairly manageable at 2 to 3 tons per week of food scraps. So we're kind of in the point where we're just looking to finalize those drop-off sites.
This is primarily for household waste, right? I think
Correct.
that's very important too.
So it's a division. We wrote into the grant X number of households and a few businesses.
Mhm.
So it's really determined by the capacity, the 2 to 3 tons per week. Generally, households would produce about 8 pounds a week. So, maybe if you had 300 households, then the balance could be a few businesses that want to kind of participate.
And we've certainly had some reach out to us already, businesses that is, to participate in this program. I'll go back to what Scott said earlier, with the education component of this. That is going to be key because Scott and I talked about this, if they're not educated, if we're not getting the proper material, anything that is contaminated will stop this project in its tracks. It will not, so that's one of the key things that we need to do is make sure that everybody's educated on what they can provide us for this scraps for composting.
And I'm fortunate, there's models out
Yeah.
there of
Yeah.
folks who've come before us. So I've been in touch with, maybe half a dozen other programs who are
Mhm.
willing to share their kind of lessons.
You're right, right.
Yeah.
You see, I mean, that's been my concern all along, especially on the major producers. They, how do we deal with that as opposed to the household waste? And then on the household waste, some people deliver it to the transfer station themselves and some have it picked up privately. So even that breaks down into, different groups. And I think we need to be focused on that. There's different parts to this and maybe the approach has to be a little different for each of these parts. That's all I'm
Agreed.
suggesting. All right, good. I look forward to the pilot. All right, anything else? That's it. Anyone have any questions for Scott? I think you're doing a great job, Scott. Keep it up. Wonderful, really. All right, Kevin, next is
Next is DPW. So the first is action agenda is a request for a new contract. This is for a term agreement for heavy construction. The bids are due on March 20th, so we will have them in just before the board meeting. So I will have bid tabs at the board meeting for who that may be. So right now it's to be determined, but this is just a term agreement contract just to have in place in case we need to use a contractor to do have some heavy construction work for us.
all right, let's bring this forward for consideration. Mr. Bruno, Mr. Castillo on the second, thank you. But discussion? Ready for the question? All those in favor of this contract signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? I carry. And next,
Couple of quick things, and a couple I didn't maybe add in here on a discussion items. Number one is Advocacy Day is this coming Wednesday. There will be a press conference in the well of the Capitol, that I will be part of that press conference. Yesterday, we had the opportunity to have a press conference at my South End shop. We had over 30 town highway superintendents from Saratoga, Washington, and Warren County, as well as county superintendents from Washington County, Essex County, Hamilton County, and of course myself. And it was intended by Senator Jim Tedisco, Senator Dan Steck, Assemblyman Matt Simpson, Assemblywoman Mary Beth Walsh, and Assemblyman Robert Smolin. Very good turnout. We didn't get as much media coverage. I think it was a 30-second spot on Channel 10 last night, but all this helps. And this is basically saying that we are not, we are appreciative of the governor of putting $800 million into the core program for DOT, but the governor has failed to put any money into the CHIPS funding, which is the local funding that we all receive. So the ask is for $250 million to be put into the CHIPS funding across the state, of course. And right now, the Assembly's budget has added this $250 million, and we're waiting to see if the Senate will add it to their budget. And then, of course, it's the three individuals in a room to decide whether or not it remains in there. I think Dan Steck put it in a good way yesterday, whereas if there's a $252 billion budget for New York State, and we're only asking for an infinitesimal $250 million, that she certainly should add that to the budget, and that should be included. So,
Well, I mean, in terms of the CHIPS funding, if there's no increase, that's effectively a cut.
it
And,
is a cut.
and when you see what we're experiencing out there at the municipal level in terms of cost, even from last year, it's so significant. And so to not even have an adjustment in there is effectively a cut. And you can pick whatever percent you want. You can say it's a 20% cut or it's a 30% cut. And I'm not going to argue with any of that. It could be that much. And, you know,
Yeah, we always say that it's, this isn't a partisan issue. It's roads everybody travels. And the fact of the matter is there's 112,000 miles of roads in New York State, and the locals maintain 87% of those, which is 97,000 miles of roads. And they even maintain some of DOT. So, and the governor's $800 million for the New York State DOT program is because of how little or how far the funding has gone because of inflationary rates. Well, we're experiencing the same thing on the local levels as well.
absolutely.
And I think Supervisor Conover can certainly talk to this, because they had projected a project last year that may have been in the $300,000, and now they're in the $400,000. So it's certainly needed. So we hope at Advocacy Day that they hear us. Typically, there's about 700 of us around the state that go down for Advocacy Day, and you can't miss us because we all wear orange shirts. And we will be down there next Wednesday, and hopefully we can get this message across and somebody hears us. So
Okay. Anything else?
that's all I have.
Okay, privilege of the floor. Anyone wishing to address the committee at this time?
Privilege of the floor.
Mr. Chairman, you're always welcome.
Well, you should get some garbage cans and pound on them like the professional lobbyists do.
And one of my biggest concerns is how cold it's been this winter. And I think we're gonna see some road heaves and damage that are probably gonna be pretty significant. I mean, we've had brutal. And I'm guessing everybody here has. I mean, it's been nasty.
So I would say over the next 2 or 3 weeks with this significant warm up, pothole complaints will be coming in.
Well, yeah,
This is gonna be a bad year. There's no doubt about that.
to lose money.
Not about it. All right, then, motion to adjourn, Mr. Strainer, Mr. Bruno on the second, all in favor of adjourning, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed,